This is the Yale B. It is a 6-pin lock that features countermilling and spools. We're going to use a Moki flat wire tensioner. And as you can see, this lock starts in a bit of a false set due to those thinner elements probably already at shear. Trying to make sure I'm not on pin 1 with the tensioner. And then we're also going to use a multi-pick PN31. This is a thin shank medium round hook to allow us to go through the warding. So let's get started. Pin 1, a little bit of a tap. Feels good. Pin 2. Little tap and it's loose. Pin 3. There we go. Pin 4. 4 is good, I think. 5. 5 is a higher lift. We gotta come down. Really get that thing in there. Got some good core movement there, so I think we got it. 6, 5, 4, 3 and 2, and 1. 1 is probably not all the way set. It may have dropped. There we go. Definitely feels good now. Back to 2. 2 is binding. Let's give it a little counter rotation. Really trying not to let me drop other pins. 2 feels good. 1, 2. I think we might just be in overmilling territory, so we're just going to go tap every pin. 4, and we're open. So that was the Yale B. This guy has caused me a lot of grief. So let's talk about why. I think this particular lock is one of the harder blue locks I have. For example, this has 6 spools, countermilling, and you compare that to, say, like the Lockwood padlock that has just 5 spools, no countermilling, and this thing's definitely more difficult. The biggest difficulty is overcoming that countermilling while not oversetting things, which is why you saw my particular hook choice. So let's get this gutted and let's take a look at what makes this work. So get the autofocus back on, get this set in here, and then get the camera adjusted down. We're gonna come probably all the way down here and then move this into view, get my light on there. So while we have it like this, let's go ahead and get the that clip off the back. Again, I like to just lift these lightly, just enough so that I can get it off. I think that's probably enough. Basically trying to minimize the amount that I have to bend it so that it lasts longer. And this particular guy, this is actually the first lock I ever grubbed. The reason I grubbed it is because I needed to progressive pin the heck out of it to get it open. We could gut it through these grubs, and since I haven't done that yet with any locks so far that I've demonstrated, I think we're going to go ahead and do that. Yeah, I do have the right sized guy ready to go. I did try to prepare a little bit, so we won't need the follower or shim until a little bit later. So let's go ahead and grab pin stack 1. and dump it out in one go. There's your spring. Spool and key pin. And then 2. Try to be a little bit more graceful this time. The spring first. And there's our spool and our key pin. Three. There they are. You can see 3 is a pretty long one. That's the guy that blocks it off pretty good. And then 4. Four came out pretty nice. Five. Five's hung up a bit. There it comes, right into the other pile. Then our last one is 6. Now I'll try not to let the core turn as I dump it out so I don't get the key pin stuck in there. And actually this one, I think the key pin and driver both get stuck in there. So this can actually turn pretty freely with just 6, which we'll look at shortly. Hopefully I got them all out. Doesn't look like it. Looks like I got things turned possibly. Oh, there's the spool and the driver pin. So, core should come out pretty easy now. Nothing fancy about the Bible or the thing itself. However, if we look at this core, you can see those overmilling edges. So typically to demonstrate those really well, you'll bring a pick in, just show that, yes, it does have nice sharp overmilling in each one of these. So what does that do? The easiest way to explain it is probably just, let's throw pin 5 in here, for example, with its driver pin. As you lift pin 5, what's going to happen is you're going to be on this spool, so the core is going to be turned. It's going to counter rotate, then you're going to get stuck on this last little bit of overmilling here. And once you're there, you're basically going to be like this, stuck. And it needs that last little bit of tap just to get over it. It acts like there's essentially 2 separate shear lines almost for each pin. Especially with the different key pin heights that you have, you'll have different guys at different points in their life cycle. For example, this guy is obviously one of the pins that, you know, helped us have that counter rotation right away. But if you throw in, for example, pin 3, I think it sits. Yeah, it kind of sits to where as soon as you tap it, the first thing, you're not going to get any spool action out of it really. It's just going to immediately go into that milling that you then need to push out of it. Pretty cool security feature that actually works surprisingly well. It's a challenging pick resistance feature when it's done right, and this particular chord does it very well. One thing to note, you may have noticed 6 is a max lift. It's a zero cut, a Yale zero cut, and it sits entirely flush. So as this thing goes, unless you touch this pin, it's gonna just glide. It catches a little bit. You'll see, like I can catch it with the side of this. But as I'm lifting 5 and stuff, both of these being very high lifts, you don't super notice it, I guess. You would notice it, for example, when it's the only, like at the end there, when it's at the only pin in the lock, it doesn't do a good job. You can see it does catch a little bit on that Bible, but it's not stopping your tensioner from turning it. So when it's in here, it catches very slightly here, but it moves pretty easily. You could theoretically possibly catch an end of a spring in there, but the way these springs are designed, I don't think it's a super concern, but it's something you do have to be cognizant of. That is a risk that could happen. That's one of the reasons you don't want to pick a lock that is in use. For lock sport purposes, we pick locks that are, we're doing this for fun. We're doing this for the challenge of solving a puzzle we can't see. If this were an installed lock and you were picking at it and you damaged this spring and potentially ruined or mangled this lock so that the only way to open it would be destructively, it wouldn't be a good time. So it's a neat little feature of the lock. I'll arrange these guys the way I usually would. I like to show everything the way it would be with stuff at shear and line them up accordingly. So that is the Yale B. Very challenging lock. One more thing I think I'll add to with my particular bitting, for example, when you have this 3 blocking access to, say, the high lifts in 5 and 6, it's definitely challenging when you have a truly paracentric keyway. I like to say that bitting doesn't matter, but it does have an effect, especially in more challenging keyways. So if you have a paracentric keyway like this, and what that means is that if I stick a pick in here, I cannot, go completely from the top through without coming off the line. I have to go through sideways. You compare that to, even a scary looking keyway, say the Dom RS8. There's a straight shot from the bottom all the way to the top. It's very thin, but it is there. Something with a more challenging keyway, for example, the classic TS5000 or Avis XP1. Clearly, there is no straight way from bottom to top, and there's not holes drilled in here, so there's no way to get through there. The only way to pick this, which we will do later, is at an angle from the side like this. So when you have challenging keyways like that, this is probably the most basic paracentric keyway. This particular Yale paracentric keyway was, I think, probably the first one, or one of the first ones ever mass produced. It started when Linus Yale actually is the designer of this particular keyway, if I remember correctly. And that means that this thing's been around for a long time, and getting used to picking this Yale keyway, you'll see it in all kinds of lock. We've seen it in other locks so far. Usually it's not quite as aggressive as this, but this one is the classic aggressive one. There's holes in this center here, so you can get every pin from here. But the max lifts, even with this hook, well, this hook, it wouldn't work very well, but the hook that I used is the PM31. Even with this one, the max lifts from here, you still can't. Some of the max lifts, you actually have to get pretty much the pick to that position, but you have to do that through that hole in the warding. It's not exactly easy, so you'll snake around it in order to push on those pins. The problem with that then is when you have one of these lower lifts or close to zero lift pins, like pin 3, is pin 3 will be right here, and when it's set, I'll see if I can demonstrate this. Pin 3 doesn't have to move that far, but if I block it, that's going to be like it's set. So I'm going to use my finger to hold it there. You can see that's doing a pretty good job of actually still being in the way. So as you'd come in with your pick, if you wanted to do, say, a really high lift on 6, I'm already moving 3. I am touching it right there. Might be hard to see. I'll see if I can get the light a better angle for it. Pin 3 is in its set location. I'm coming in, I'm snaking, I'm trying to lift 6. I am touching pin 3. Pin 3 is moving right now. It's moving against my finger. So that means I would overset that pin, even with a very careful snake around this. Because pin 3 is such a high lift, it does a very good job of blocking access to those back ones. Even with this narrower shank design, it still can be in the way. I wanted to initially try to pick this with one of my jimmies, for example. But with the jimmy, if I come in here and I'm pushing on 6, and then I have to snake around the keyway, I'm already pushing on. I don't even get to snake that far. I'm already pushing on pin 3. I cannot snake around pin 3 and push on pin 6 without oversetting 3. So that was a very big difficulty. When you have a nice open keyway, you can just, go underneath every pin you need to. You can go underneath every pin you need to lift up every pin. But when you have this very paracentric keyway, these longer pins can actually block access very effectively to the back one. That's when bidding matters. So on a lot of locks, bidding really is just, not a super effective thing you really have to worry about. I think a lot of people worry about it on locks that aren't actually difficult to maneuver in the keyway with. But this is one of them that, if you get something like this, it can be challenging to get those higher lifts. I had to move to this thin shank hook just so that I would have enough room to maneuver and get that tip in there far enough to push one of these high lift pins behind this lower lift. And if you look too, this isn't even the lowest lift possible. If you look at this key and you were to compare its cuts, pin 6 here is a Yale 0 cut. Pin 3 is a Yale 7 cut, I believe, 7 out of 9. So there is 8 and 9. And if you get to 9, it essentially puts the pin right there where there'd be just a hair this warding left. I don't know if a 9 pin works in this particular drilled setup. I think it does, but it would be effectively a no lift. You touch that pin, you're going to overset it. And with this hook, as you can see with this hook, if you do the classic trick of laying your hook on the, I can't get to 6 in a normal way. It goes into 3, but you got to remember this is just a 2D view of it. In the real lock, you're in a 3-dimensional aspect. You can actually snake this just right to get that pin set while not touching 3. So this 2D view makes it look like I wouldn't be able to do that, but I can do it with this hook provided I get the right angle. I used a deeper profile just to make it even easier on myself. So whereas with the jimmy, even with the turning it, I am solidly in this warding. I can't navigate. It is just too thick. Even turning it sideways, I'd have to turn it and use it like a flag to essentially move that. So that's the Yale B for you. We'll get a little bit closer pin shot here. Hopefully that discussion makes sense on why this lock can be challenging. The thing is, like I said, you could have harder bidding than this, and this was a fairly hard bidding for myself, which is, why when I was initially, I actually had already gotten my blue belt when I first got this lock, and I grubbed it just so that I could progressive pin it and learn the lock. And even coming back to it now, many months later, a lot more locks under my belt, a lot higher belt rating, currently sitting at red belt with 2 picked black belt locks even. This is still a challenging lock to pick, so hopefully you guys find that enjoyable, and I will see you all later.